I'm State Senator Katie Muth. I represent Senate District 44, which is parts of Chester, Berks, and Montgomery counties. And I have some of my team here today, so I'm going to let them unmute and introduce themselves because without them, I would be a sinking ship. So I want to make sure that they introduce themselves. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm Jeff Kavanaugh. I'm Senator Muth's Deputy Chief of Staff and Communications Director, and I'm her Executive Director of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Gareth.
And my name's Gareth Orm. I'm Senator Muth's Legislative Director.
And Megan. Uh-oh, can she not unmute? Can you unmute her, Jeff?
Sorry about that. Megan McDonough, and I'm a part-time legislative assistant for Senator Katie Muth.
I don't know if Nikki, my chief of staff, got on yet, but will be getting on if she's not on yet. So we will jump right into it. This is a rundown of some of what was taking place with the Pennsylvania budget, with the state budget, and then also some updates on data center related. And we could talk about data center development in Pennsylvania for hours, and we plan to in the future. This is just some clarifying points about what did or didn't happen in Harrisburg and what still needs to happen in terms of protecting people from an industrial development. So we got your questions in advance. I think a lot of them will be answered with this presentation, but if they aren't, we'll have a Q&A at the end as well. And there were a couple of really specific questions that we will respond to directly. One was, I think, about inheritance tax. So we have an answer for you on that, whoever sent that in. So we'll make sure that no matter what, you get your questions answered. And if you have questions throughout, just drop them in the chat right there, and we will make sure that we address them at the end. So do you want to go to the next slide, Gareth? I forgot to mention on that first slide, there's a photo of me at a podium, but what wasn't in the photo because the size and space was a lot of other people, 100-some plus people that came to the Capitol late June to demand some action on data center development to protect people from the array of harms. And I just wanted to say thank you to Food and Water Watch for helping get transportation to that event and for helping me get really great guest speakers of residents that live in these impacted communities. And it was a great event. We plan to do some similar things in the near future. Okay, thanks, Gareth. Okay, so let's start with the budget. The actual budget bill, for awareness sake, was House Bill 2400. The Pennsylvania budget process, the state government budget process, is not easy to follow. It remains a mystery to myself and my staff almost to the moments prior to voting or the night before voting, I guess this time. We were shocked we were given something to read overnight. Might have been the first time. So it is much sleuthing around and trying to piece things together, and a lot of it you don't realize what it meant until after the fact, and you see things policy-wise implemented that were wedged into code bills. So we'll go into that. Our budget was just over $50 billion, signed into law on July 12th, despite our constitutional deadline to pass a budget by June 30th. This is the fifth late budget for those who are worried about the Constitution being upheld. Our budget highlights. So I want to be clear. I voted against this budget, and I'll explain why, but there are some things in here that I think are worth mentioning. I don't think that it is representative of a democracy and a government that works as hard as it humanly can for people. So I'm always pushing for more out of our state government. That's what Pennsylvanians deserve. But I want to hit some high points that did get into this very mediocre, basically flat-funded, rob Peter to pay Paul budget. We were able to continue the payments for public education required from the Commonwealth Court decision on fair funding. So that was upheld with the $58 million funding in basic education. We had $50 million for special education, which when you see the word increase, you're going to see down here that these really weren't increases. The legislature decided to move money around, and this is what the moving of money around from different accounts resulted in. For $41.2 million in early intervention funding, very important. The upside was there was no voucher battle. There was no efforts to further privatize our public education system in K through 12. I did note there yet, because there are some rumors that in the fall that Pennsylvania will opt into the Educational Choice for Children Act. I guess that's the Trump administration's version of vouchers. So just keep an eye out for that and maybe call the governor and say that's a terrible idea. And we had finally, after years and years and years of being flat funded, which really means you're underfunded because of inflationary costs that go up for all of us every year, including human service providers, right? Rape crisis centers finally got an increase, which to me is near and dear to my heart as a rape survivor, but it's also so pathetic that it took this many years. So for me, I'm relieved, but don't want to wait for years and years and years for their next increase, right? We also had some increased money or money moved from other accounts to put more money towards mental health. One of the big issues, obviously, that Pennsylvania is still fighting to combat. And again, as I mentioned, these were framed as increases by many putting out their newsletters and their social media posts that all these things were increased. The budget is pretty much balanced on delayed payments to our Medicaid managed care organizations. So they're just paying them later and keeping that money ahead. And I see someone has to go to a data center application. Thank you for coming. There'll be a recording. I see it popped up, a hearing, but thank you for joining us. And this was, again, sort of moving the money around, robbing Peter to pay Paul. You can go ahead, Gareth. Okay, so budget lows. Like I just said, Pennsylvania's broke. We need some money. Pennsylvania is the home to corporate handouts. Pennsylvania loves to give corporations and entities seeking to profit from the Commonwealth tax loopholes, tax abatements, tax refunds, tax exemptions. And because of that, we are short on revenue. We had options on the table that never saw the light of day. We could actually make people pay their fair share in taxes, including the uber wealthy on their passive income. That's the money they make off of all their investments, not actually doing a 9-to-5 job or working 40 hours a week. We could close the tax loophole, the Delaware loophole that allows multi-state corporations in Pennsylvania to pay $0 in corporate net income tax, and that did not happen. We also could tax digital advertisements, those annoying things that pop up in your feed every 3 seconds when you're trying to read something and you have to click out of and you end up clicking into it. And we did not tax those. All of these are proposed bills that myself, Senator Lindsey Williams, and Senator Nikhil Saval have been pushing for, as well as companion legislation in the House of Representatives. And none of that moved. And we also had a court-ordered decision stating that skill games in Pennsylvania, those games that are in gas stations and apparently even skee ball, which broke my heart. Soon skee ball will be illegal in October if we don't fix this. And they are not taxed, nor are they regulated. So if you win on one of these machines, technically it's very difficult to get a pay. You could face difficulty getting your payout for your winnings, as technically they're not legal. So that, I think, is an October deadline to figure out how we're going to regulate those in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And for all of us skee ball players, we really hope that happens. And it did not happen so far. So again, we are in a pinch for pennies here. And one of the most egregious things to me, not just as the chair of Veterans Affairs and emergency preparedness, but just as a human being and a former sports medicine person who really relied on EMS during big high event or high profile sports games and even high school games, that the first responders of our Commonwealth, fire and EMS, still did not, again, for I think the second or third, it was again, I think it's the third year in a row, left out. Am I right, Jeff, or is it second? I don't want to misspeak. I think it's second or third.
The $30 million grant program, this is the second year.
Okay. Second year in a row that this increase was not added. It was proposed in the governor's budget, and it was one of the first things negotiated right off the table. So we have predominantly volunteer fire departments in our Commonwealth, and our EMS cannot get direct reimbursement from insurance companies in Pennsylvania because The law prohibits the reimbursement checks to be mailed to the EMS providers directly. We have a bill to fix that, but it has not moved. And so it is somewhat just a slap in the face in terms of just general health and welfare of the communities all across the state that this did not happen. We also did not have a surcharge increase for our 911 system, which is actually on We the People's cell phone or phone bills. It would be, some odd number of cents added on so that our 911 facilities in all the counties could be funded adequately. And again, that did not happen. And so the counties now have to figure out how to fill that void. The other really infuriating thing is that there was funding increases to a program called Pennsylvania Sites, PA Sites, that uses public dollars to provide grants to for-profit entities for shovel-ready sites. So grading land, extending utilities, creating these shovel-ready industrial sites designed to attract massive private developments. With this alleged, we're going to have so much tax revenue from these projects, and this includes these grants can be given to Hot Topic hyperscale data center developers. So that was something that they could find some change for in the budget, but not our first responders. Go ahead, Gareth. So the fiscal code, there's often code bills. There was a school code bill. We kind of went over those points mostly in the budget. There was some other high points in there, like about recess being allowed and some other things. The fiscal code was the bill of the budget that contained all of the chaos and the misleading policies. And there were some good things dumped in there that are, people's legislative initiatives. And then there were some things dumped in there that are absolutely horrible. So we're going to go over the good stuff first, which was a cost of living adjustment for the retirees of the Commonwealth and our public school system. Finally, after 24 years, the pre-Act 9, so these are our oldest retirees, finally got a cost of living adjustment to their pension from the state and from the public schools. And we've had multiple pieces of legislation on this, myself and Senator Kane. My grandma Violet would have received this COLA had she lived long enough. And there were retirees living in poverty because of how long this took to get enacted. And so we don't have the numbers for the state employees retirement system, but for the public school employees retirement system, approximately 100,000 people of the annuitants that were, able to qualify for this COLA, they died before they got it. So it took all those years and they never got it. So it's just a stark example on how delayed policy making in the legislature really does kill people. I'll just put it bluntly. It's obscene. And we also got a COLA for our retired municipal police officers and firefighters, which was important. And for once in a blue moon, and it really was probably never happen again, there was a Katie Muth bill wedged into a code bill, which was to increase the loan amounts, loans, not grants, loans for the fire and EMS loan program to account for the actual cost to secure adequate facilities and equipment needed by our first responders. Again, yes, I should be like, woo, look at my bill. It got give me a break. This shouldn't even be a thing, right? This should have happened. Good grief, however long ago. I will say I find it, I'm somewhat impressed with us that we were the only thing in the budget that was tied to an inflation adjustment moving forward, meaning we don't have to come back and fight about this being adjusted to the new costs that it actually is. It's actually tied into inflation moving forward, which was the only thing. So proud of us that we worked hard on that, but for good grief, this is, low hanging fruit. And fiscal code, we call it the trash. I don't know if you see Toy Story 4, but that's what Forky always just walks around and says trash. And that's what we call in most of the fiscal code. There's a lot of trash in the fiscal code. There was some efforts to attempt to regulate what is called FPRs, which is sort of like this toxic fertilizer, food processing residuals. And that sounds somewhat harmless, but it's I just read about a horrible article the other day about how it's the feces of farm animals. It's just a bunch of food waste that is then spread on farm fields. It's all over Pennsylvania. And it allows these commercial manufacturers to spend less money paying for the tipping fee at a landfill to dispose of their waste there and instead spread it on farm fields. And there are a tremendous amount of public health and environmental concerns around this practice. And in the fiscal code, the language that was in there now allows this practice to be considered a normal agricultural operation, which it was not prior to this in the law. And the new regulations will take 2 years. They have up to 2 years to create them, the Department of Agriculture and the Pennsylvania DEP. And there's no public health entity that's a part of establishing these regulations. And Pennsylvania has a long history of screwing over farmers between corporate industries. And to be frank, Pennsylvania's historical reliance on self-reporting by the entity doing business in the Commonwealth has left us with a big mess, literally. Leading into messes, this is a perfect segue. One of the other robbing Peter to pay Paul is $19 million is being celebrated to plug these abandoned wells in our Commonwealth. Well, that money that actually should have just been paid by the entity who drilled a well in our state in the first place, but didn't and got out of Dodge, and now our tax dollars are paying to plug these wells. That money is actually being shifted, right? I said no new revenue, shifted to from one of the funds. There's multiple. One of them is the Industrial Land Recycling Fund, which is used for brownfield remediation. And I assure you that all of the brownfields in this Commonwealth are not remediated. And so taking money out of that fund just leaves more people in harm's way and not able to complete that program to clean up contaminated land. Then again, like I said, taxpayers are paying for this. So that was disturbing in terms of moving money around. Next slide. Okay, so this is a stage. You like this stage? It's a great little stage. There's a guy playing the guitar. It's like, my gosh. It was very performative in June. Some of the people where I work were listening to the people that they seek support from for reelection. And there was lots of chit-chattering about all the great things that were happening in the various chambers and in the committees. And it made it almost seem like, because our office got a lot of phone calls, thinking that certain things actually happened that did not. So there was one little itty bitty granule of data center related policy in the fiscal code. And I'm not even going to call it a regulation because it's not a regulation, it's a reporting requirement. And that was in the fiscal code for mandating that data centers using more than 10 megawatts of electricity annually disclose their energy and water usage. Disclose. So this is self-reported information that is submitted to the state once a year. I don't know who wrote this or thought this was a good idea, but there are real-time monitoring of your own home for these things. So I really need someone to explain to me why we're at an annual reporting. And also there's nothing about this that says we're studying Pennsylvania's drinking water supply in a comprehensive way to show that humans won't run out of water, right? That we won't run out of water. So again, people thought that in the legislature that maybe if we look like we did something, maybe people will think we did something. And this is what we got. And the budget negotiations, unfortunately, despite both chambers passing legislation to repeal the data center equipment sales and use tax exemption that is utilized at 15 data centers in the Commonwealth, that never happened. Both chambers passed it back over to one another. Neither of them ran the other bill, and none of them were signed into law. So as we sit here on this Zoom and have this discussion, there are, I think it's on the next slide, data center bros applying for the sales and use tax exemption, probably as we speak. So let's go in. That's the budget wrap up. Like I said, there were some other nuggets in there. I'm sure you can I'm sure you read about some of the other legislators and their spin on this. Bottom line is, we need revenue. Pennsylvania needs a fair tax system. We working people and retired people, we're paying our fair share. And it's time that everyone that does business in this Commonwealth to pay their fair share, instead of using our tax dollars alone to pave our roads, build bridges, enhance public safety, all of those things. The jig's up. We're done with mediocre budgets. And so the other things that were ignored alongside the sales and use tax exemption repeal, there were plenty of data center moratorium bills floating around the legislature. And despite 74% of voters saying they oppose building an AI data center in their community, I want to talk to somebody in the 16% of the voters that would support it. I'm waiting for someone to do an interview and be like, you know what? I live by this hyperscale data center. It is so great. Like, where's that TV interview? I'm waiting for it. I want to meet that person that loves living next to the 24/7 health harming data center. You would think we could find someone, the United States has over 4,000 data centers. The legislature did not enact a moratorium. So I just really want to be clear about this. There is no moratorium in place. There was a lot of confusion around this, and I'm not going to apologize, but I acknowledge that some of my colleagues' messaging on this implied that there was, which is a horrible misinformation tidbit to send out to the public, because if you believe that and you stop paying attention to what's happening in your own community because you're trying to see what applications could be submitted, there is no moratorium enacted in Pennsylvania. There are some municipalities that are already using what is in their legal purview, which is called a curative amendment. And that process is being used to put a 180-day pause on incoming applications to update zoning regulations, to put in protections and requirements for land use around hyperscale data centers, or just data centers, and potentially on-site power generation. So that curative amendment process is already allowed in the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code, despite that there is legislation, I'm blanking on the number, House Bill 2496, that authorizes municipalities to enact an optional 180-day pause. I just said we already have that under the Municipal Planning Code. Not real sure what was going to happen there, but that's a duplicative measure. And, I commend the municipalities that are doing this now, that are taking the actionable steps to protect their residents, and hope that others do. But there's 30-some% of the whole state that has no zoning. So that's problematic. And also the fact that there's a lot of misleading legal advice going around to these local governments about what they're quote unquote required to allow to be built. So that bill, House Bill 2496, did not passed out of the Senate committee, but it never made it to the floor for a vote. And again, we already have that. I know, Paula, I'd love to be like New York, but obviously you see what we're dealing here in Pennsylvania. Senate Bill 1345 did pass out of the Senate committee, of the local government committee, and then was also amended in rules right as we were passed the night before we passed the budget, but that bill never got brought to the Senate floor for a vote. The prime sponsor of that bill is Jared Coleman. He's up for re-election. I assume, again, back to that, you don't have to turn it back, but to the slide with the stage of performances on it. This budget and the bills that did or didn't run along the budget, very much a re-election budget. And now everybody can put on a mailer that's up for re-elections. They can say, well, I voted to repeal the data center sales and use tax exemption. Well, maybe you did, but guess what? It did not get signed into law. So I imagine that'll be in your feed or your mailbox somewhere if you're in one of these districts that are up for have a re-election, all the House representatives and the even number of Senate districts, including Mr. Coleman. So that bill remains in the Rules Committee, and the bill that I introduced, which is a mandatory, and I think that's a key point, is the other two bills are optional. Municipalities have to opt in to do these moratoriums. The Senate Bill 1345 was 18 months opt-in. And we know that House Bill 2496 was an opt-in of the 180-day pause that they already can do. And the legislation we put forth, despite some of my House Democratic colleagues stating that it's not constitutional, we saw what just happened in New York. We discussed earlier the picking and choosing, cherry picking of the Constitution in Pennsylvania. We missed deadlines, that's okay. But if we try to protect people using the Constitution, that's not allowed. And our governor has issued several executive orders to advance AI, the AI footprint and data center footprint here in our Commonwealth. And no one seemed to think that that was unconstitutional, which is interesting. And so somehow there's some thought that my moratorium bill for a 3-year moratorium is unconstitutional, despite the state having authority for policing powers and protecting itself. It takes 3 years right now, 3 years, to get a fire truck delivered from order to delivery. 3 years. These hyperscale data centers are bigger than the length of a fire truck hose. I mentioned earlier, we have first responders predominantly that are volunteer for our fire. And these massive facilities, when they have a fire, it's a real humdinger. It's not, a little pull up one truck and put it all out. The equipment and staffing needs to host these types of facilities in your community are immense. And I don't think that it's unreasonable to, if you truly want to bring this industry into Pennsylvania, instead of just doing it in a bullying and threatening manner as it's happening right now, that we plan for it and actually prepare our first responders. I don't know why that's so crazy. So I guess that's just not something my colleagues are thinking about from a public safety and well-being perspective, especially the health of our first responders going into things unprepared and untrained. And so I guess I shouldn't be shocked by that. There's some of my colleagues that are happy to build hyperscale data centers in front of nuclear power plants because, national security, we have to have more data centers. What says national security more than a hyperscale data center 500 feet from a nuclear power plant? Yeah. And so again, none of these moratoriums moved. Everybody's on summer vacay. Everyone's living the dream right now in the legislature. They got out, they passed their budget. They're doing their little hoo-ha on social media. All the while, local communities are being just flooded with these hyperscale data center applications. Go ahead, Gareth. So another thing that's, as you open your electric bill this month, and it's been hot as hell, and it's not getting any cooler. And that is your rate increases, as we are all subsidizing as ratepayers the build out of hyperscale data centers and the whole PJM grid and in the Commonwealth. And so both on the transmission side from PJM and then the distribution side from our lovely public or our electric utility providers. In my area would be PECO, some of you might be PP&L, some of you might be Med-Ed. Doesn't matter who you have, we're all being ripped off and paying way more than we've ever paid. And not for better services or more reliable services, but just so that the big tech bros can have, everything given to them for free. And we have a bill, Senate Bill 1114, modeled after the Oregon Power Act, which is to literally stop this from happening. And it is awaiting action in the Senate Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure Committee. So maybe if you want to call the people that are on that committee or ask somebody in the House to introduce something like this, including and maybe tack on a 3-year moratorium, because the House likes to say that the 3-year moratorium can't move out of the Senate. Well, it's funny that nobody in the House of Representatives in Harrisburg has introduced the companion to the 3-year moratorium or the Ratepayer Protection Act, despite some bills being titled as helping ratepayers. Many of those bills, if not all, also allow for more fossil fuel generation to power data centers, including on-site with massive gas turbines. So not only could you be living 500 feet from a hyperscale data center and then a nice gas-fired turbine power plant as well. So that sounds real nice ratepayer protection. So go ahead, Gareth. So all this to say is like, this is overwhelming. Things are on fire. I feel like every day there's a new thing to go figure out. There's someone else wanting to build a data center. There's a warehouse turning into a data center. I'm driving off the turnpike, looking at cleared land, taking pictures. It's quite wild. Like, this is like nothing I've ever seen. I think maybe it was similar from what I've read about, as I was not here for when fracking and Act 13 was passed back under Tom Corbett. But when I hear about it, I'm like, who was there like saying like, stop this madness? And I feel like I'm like in that same situation just now with hyperscale data centers. And, you know, if it weren't for all of you, it would be very lonely. So I want to say thank you for all the advocacy that many of you have done and try to increase awareness on this. But we have a ticking clock running here and we are the underdog. So what can you do? Besides, you know, freak out, which we're all allowed to freak out, get your, you know, have the nervous breakdown, get yourself together, and we're going to proceed and win this war against the oligarchs. But here's my suggestions, just to someone who is in Harrisburg, is that you calling and emailing and tagging your elected officials that aren't doing the things that you want them to do or supporting the policies that you want them to support, or the ones that just won't come out on an issue. Like, I really would love for people to start asking. Ask me, I'm going to tell you my stance. Do I think people should live next to a hyperscale data center? No, I don't care if it's one house on a farm or if it's a whole neighborhood. I don't think that any human should have to live next to an industrial operation of any kind that makes them sick, makes their family sick, and deteriorates their quality of life. That I don't support that, period. And that shouldn't be a hard question to answer, right? Like, that should not be a hard question to answer. And I'm finding it's quite hard for some people to answer that question. So I think, you know, if you can be a little bit more specific in your questions, hold these people accountable. They are supposed to work for you. You pay their salary. You are taxpayers. You are the government. And, you know, some of the people I work with get real salty about, you know, being scrutinized in the public. Well, then you wouldn't be if you did the right thing. So push them to do the right thing. Public accountability can influence decision making. We sort of saw that. They heard us. They started doing some performance things and they thought we'd all believe it, right? You know, we're all going to be tricked by the performance policies that didn't even end up happening. And here we are. So there's other ways you can join. There's a plethora of Facebook groups on data center, you know, trying to block data center development in communities. Support one another, show up to those meetings, right? If I you know, represent 600 feet across the river from Limerick Township that is no longer in Senate District 44, but that doesn't mean what happens in Limerick Township doesn't impact neighboring municipalities. And we see Canadian wildfires. That's a far journey for that kind of harmful air pollution to make, and that's PM 2.5 particulate, which is the same type of air pollution spewing out of the 7,000 plus generators in Loudoun County, Virginia, Data Center Alley. So I don't know about you, but I don't want Pennsylvania to have 7,000 generators for data centers in any county. And we are going to have to fight this together. So, you know, pack the room, help each other ask the right questions at these hearings. The other part is get good at making public comment. There's a lot to comment on right now, either at local meetings. The federal government is rolling back every protective regulation. I know it might not seem like it matters, but you should still submit your public comment. I just did one today on the PFAS regulations that are being rolled back again, as if we don't know the harm. And if you're someone who works in a field of you know, and has expertise in something related to you know, public health or the development of hyperscale data centers, and you want to be on the good guy side and provide your help as an expert witness. Expert witnesses are very expensive. People are spending a lot of their own money trying to fight for their lives and fighting against their own really state government for inviting this industry in. So again, doing public comments at your local municipalities, wherever, or also written, submitted public comments. Next slide is going to go ahead. So these are links, and again, we'll send this out at the end, that I think when people are like, how do you keep up with all this? So this is kind of like my little arsenal of how I try being the operative word, keep up with all this, right? And And that's just because there's so much going on, and Pennsylvania is very, has a unique structure of government. So Pennsylvania General Assembly, you can follow a legislator, meaning you'll get email updates about their bills they introduce or votes they take, or you can follow a piece of legislation. So you can sign up to follow a bill to see what happens to it if it ever moves, if it gets amended or gets a vote, and you'll get an alert that way. So there's a sign up option on the PA Legis website. And that's also what you can see where the vote totals of bills that are being voted on in Harrisburg, and the Harrisburg session calendars for both chambers. Then the Pennsylvania Bulletin, this should be like text. I would love for this to be texted out to Pennsylvanians every Friday. I don't know who would read it besides me and like 10 other people, but we do. Because there's all sorts of horrible things buried in the Pennsylvania Bulletin about permit notices for a plethora of industrial development that is terrifying. And at least or, oh my gosh, there's another brownfield created in Pennsylvania at a frac pad because somebody spewed, 50,000 gallons of God knows what all over the earth. And you read a lot in that, and it's very informative in terms of getting those alerts of applications submitted, or reports submitted or reports coming out. Definitely get in there and sign up for that alert. It'll come to your inbox every Friday. The Public Notice Pennsylvania, that website is how myself, and I know Joanna, who lives in my townships on here, and some others, we've learned to use that to check if municipalities are advertising things appropriately according to the municipal planning code requirements, and also just what is being advertised. It's a little bit wonky of a site, so sometimes you have to reset your browser so your search criteria doesn't get stuck. But you can essentially, I just put in, sometimes I'll put search term data centers, and you can select the county, and then it'll show you all the different things that come up, and it's super helpful. Something I wish I would have learned about earlier on, but in the last year and a half, the whole local government involvement with land use has just, skyrocketed. And I'm just like all of you learning all these things because state and local government are very different. But local government has a lot of power, and they need to use it to protect all of us, because the other two levels of government are not going to do it. Not right now. So then, if you haven't already read or follow the Pennsylvania Environmental Digest blog, that is Dave Hess, who's a former secretary of the DEP. He puts out probably the most informative, comprehensive set of resources daily. And he'll have links to the other things that link out to this. It's so great. He does such a great job putting everything in there. He does things on data centers. He does everything from energy, oil and gas, stream pollution, all of it, radioactivity and frac waste that I just grateful that he covers that, because Pennsylvania does not classify oil and gas waste as hazardous in the Commonwealth. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, because I forgot, and now I really need to say this. All of these data center sites that are proposed on brownfields and Superfund sites, we hear the man in the White House talk about that. We hear Dave McCormick talk about that. And we've heard our governor talk about that we are going to redevelop these brown sites and these Superfund sites. Please understand that there is nothing in the law that requires these sites to be remediated from the health harming contaminants, that legacy pollution that exists there prior to development. So I think people think that that's a requirement. It is not. And I think that's something that needs to be a requirement. We're putting together legislation to require it, but I don't even know that it has to be legislated. If it could be internally directed by the governor to the DEP at least. And in East Whiteland Township, Chester County, and Senate District 44, there's a Superfund site that is that it's been undetermined as to what the health harms for human exposure would be at that site. And they are building a hyperscale data center there, right across the street from where people live. And so that's just really important. And Dave Hess does a good job covering all of these things, and just being aware of what you think you might be protected from in Pennsylvania, you may most likely not be. Food and Water Watch also does great calls to action when it comes to bills and legislation that we need people to call, make calls to electeds, or sign on to, petitions, or they also do a great little, I think it's every other week, about local government stuff, in the evenings on Zoom. So they're one of the organizations that really does work to empower local people to get involved, and be at these, municipal meetings, and representing themselves in these hearings, and fighting literally, for your life. So I want to say thank you to them. But all those are entities. And if you have something else you think we should share out that's a great resource that you have found, then please let us know, because we'd be happy to, share that as well with in our weekly e-blast, or on social, or wherever. And then I think we're on Q&A. How am I in time? I'm not that bad. I felt like I went fast. There's probably people like, lady, you talk way too fast. Luckily it's recorded. So do we want, how should I handle this, Jeff? Do you want me to look in the chat? Or are there things that I missed?
I could ask you a couple of the submitted questions
Okay.
to start, and then if anybody on here has questions, you could start to drop them in the chat, because I know we've been answering some of them as they've come in, or you have too.
Okay.
So non-data center question from Barbara in Phoenixville. Will Pennsylvania consider passing a campaign contribution laws like Montana? So I know we've been talking about that.
That's a timely question, Barbara, for at least me and my team. We thought we had a bill together, and as I was reading it, I'm like, well, I don't think it does enough. So now we're going back and making sure it's the strongest version. And it's, some people don't like to hear the word publicly funded elections, because it sounds like the people have to pay for it, but you do, but everybody's, then the electoral process is not influenced by special interests. And so Pennsylvania, at the state level and the local level, have no caps on campaign contributions. We're one of the worst states in the country for campaign finance reform and really ethics reform. So we are working on it. So stay tuned, because it is a historical, it's a historical issue in Pennsylvania. The railroad industry used to have, I just learned this last year, used to have a desk on the Senate floor in the Capitol, on the floor, the railroad lobbying industry. So it goes to show you, that Pennsylvania has a loyalty to corporate donors, and probably part of the, not probably, it's definitely part of the problem, getting a government that's representative of the people versus special interests. So we got it, Barbara. Stay tuned.
A data center question from Kim Miner. How far away from a large hyperscale data center could sound pollution, light pollution, and water affect neighborhood residents?
So those are all good, very good questions. And so I'm going to start with the water, because it's the easiest one. So groundwater contamination has been shown to travel even higher than 10 miles, sometimes 15 miles. And depending on the hydrogeology, so what's underneath the earth, will depend on how far pollutants can migrate. So that can vary based on where you live. So know that there's no like 1 mile, radius I could give you that, I would just say that, it certainly has capacity to travel several miles, if not more. So that's water. Air pollution, we know, can go hundreds of miles, including PM 2.5. We just saw it all come down from Canada. And so, and not all air pollution is visible to the human eye. And so the methane gas that's used for fossil fuel power generation, and diesel for generators, and all of those things have emissions that the human eye can't necessarily see. So there are fancy cameras that can see these images and show you the emissions. So we know that air pollution, our area is one of the worst. Pennsylvania's air quality is just absolutely terrible. And I was at a meeting at East Pikeland Township the other evening, I think 2 weeks ago now, and one of the women giving public comment, like this sticks with me, is government shouldn't be making it harder for us to breathe. And I think that that's just a really, yeah, you're absolutely right. Government should not be making it harder for us to breathe. And so, yeah, that was just seems like an obvious thing, but unfortunately here we all are. The sound is interesting. So sound can travel miles and miles. Infrasound, the low frequency sound that we don't hear, but our body feels and reacts to physiologically and not in a good way, can actually travel hundreds of miles. And infrasound is hard. There's not a lot of regulations on it compared to like noise pollution that's louder and more audible and in a decibel measurement of like A weighted. So infrasound is troubling. I think probably there's been an avoidance to measure and study it or make it regulated because it is so pervasive of all technology. Even today, we're having like a shower renovation in our house from a construction defect, and I was in another part of my house, and I was like, "What is that noise?" And I didn't know. I mean, it was just sound like a motor, like a I don't even know, a lawnmower. No one was mowing the lawn. I still don't know what it is, but it was driving me bananas. And so, 24/7 noise is incredibly harmful, right? We know that OSHA regulations have requirements for workday length relative to sound exposure, but that's for workers, and that's not for the public. So the health harms, I think if you look at other industries, and it's not like the data side, I get a little frustrated when people are like, we don't yet know the harms of data centers. Well, we've had hyperscale data centers have been being built in Virginia mostly, and some other places in the state for quite some time. We've studied the water contamination and all the health harms. So I mean, at the end of the day, if there's an entity saying they're not going to have harm beyond their property line, there should be specs for the materials they're going to use to block sound. There should be, all these things should be provable. If we have the most data centers in America, someone take us to that data center that doesn't allow sound into our homes through our walls and windows and doesn't pollute our air and doesn't destroy our water or take up all the water. Like someone take me to the data center. I'll go pay my own way. I want to see it. I want to go there, measure. I want to know. I have yet to have anybody show me that data center. So, yeah, some things should just not be built or be built in the middle of nowhere. That's so it's somewhat, it could vary on your location, and obviously seasons also change sound travel. Hot air versus cold air transport sound farther. The elevation of your home compared to the facility. I live 4 miles from the nuclear power plant in Limerick, and I can hear the fans running 4 miles away because I live higher up on a hill and can see the towers out my bedroom window, even though that's not the community I live in. But yeah, next question.
We got one in the chat here from Jennifer about our state parks are facing financial crisis, and many other states charge a small admission fee or at least a charge for parking. Would Pennsylvania consider doing something like that to support state park infrastructure?
Is it charging for parking? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think just a way to increase funding to help state parks.
Right. I think a way to increase funding is making all the entities that use Pennsylvania for business to pay their fair share into our tax system. I don't think that you and I should have to pay to park at the park that our tax dollars built. Why should we have to pay to park there? It's a public facility. Again, you'll see a lot of corporations making donations to the food banks and to the libraries and all these things. Why don't you just pay your damn taxes like we all do? And then maybe we'd have all of us could have, the things that make life good and make us safe and keep us healthy. But yeah, I understand. I support more park funding 110%. But I don't think that the regular people of the Commonwealth should have to pay more than they already are. What else?
We got a question from Kyle in Phoenixville. Are you aware of any efforts to sue or initiate a case against the Commonwealth for breach of Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution regarding the push for data centers in Pennsylvania as if they were Wawas?
Or Sheets. Sheets is also invading. I'm not aware of a specific effort, if that's the question, in terms of like, is an entity filing. This keeps me up at night. I have deep regret that I didn't go to law school. I don't know that it's too late, but you know, to figure out if I have this job next year first. But if you're asking me my humble non-legal opinion, since I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe that our constitutional rights are being just completely suffocated right now in Pennsylvania. I don't even know how you can argue that any executive order by our governor promoting this and allowing this fast track permits for this stuff before municipalities even have decided locally if it's approved for that type of land use. I think that's unconstitutional. I think that I do agree that there's going to have to be court action. Because the legislature is unfortunately either bought and paid for by the entity seeking to build these. They're afraid of the building trade unions going up against them in a re-election cycle, and they don't want to go against the governor because then you'll lose grant money to your district or you'll be punished. And I understand that. I live that reality every day. I'm not well loved by the regime, but you know what? Nobody voted for me to go to Harrisburg to be the most popular person amongst my peers. And I'd rather stand alone and fight for the right thing for people than, hang out at a, lobbyist dinner and pat myself on the back for the half-ass effort I made. So I think court action needs to happen because this, like I said earlier, like municipalities are just getting, some are like, there are some shady ones. I will say, I'm not going to dismiss because we all have read about some BS hoo-ha, like behind the scenes. And then you see like everybody suddenly resigns from a board or something. And there are a lot of legal entities and engineering firms that are repeat offenders in this saga. I like want to like a most wanted poster thing or something. Maybe we should do that. Yeah, I see somebody put in there, Brian O'Neill, data center developer. Brian O'Neill didn't pay $2 million in taxes. Like, thanks, Brian O'Neill, who got $12 million in grants from the state of Pennsylvania. Wants to build these massive things where everybody lives. And he's going to be a good neighbor, don't you worry. And so, yeah, Mr. Burns. And so I think that there will have to be legal action, and I pray, like, just hope that there is an ethical judiciary and a person that gets this case that when it comes before them, because it is the dome of corruption. It is, and we judges, and so far, knock on wood. My desk is IKEA, so it's fake wood. I think this is real wood. Knock on wood that that judges continue to rule in favor of the municipalities denying these requests for land use and the people fighting back against this, because it is wrong. This is happening in such a very invasive, pervasive, corrupt way that it's really sad. I mean, it's the best way to say it. It's just sad. So I think court action, legal action would help.
We had a submitted question from Jessica related to the Canadian wildfires. What can we do in the future to stop Pennsylvania from burning, flooding, or other extreme weather events caused by climate change?
Pennsylvania is the #2 gas producing state in the nation next to Texas. Pennsylvania is giving Mother Earth a real ringing. Maybe if Pennsylvania stopped just, polluting the atmosphere, we wouldn't be contributing to all of this. But our state is a big contributor to it. So that's a reality we have to understand and demand better of those who allow it to be. And again, there's ways to stop this. And I do feel like it's like, how did we get here? My God, with the one thing we have to live on, unless there's like all the rich people know the secret place they're going to move to, like some planet. But like, as far as I know, this is where I'm staying. So I just, it's like, who, like, how do you stop this? And it's just like, this data center thing did not do anything but reinvigorate the oil and gas industry and the petrochemical industry. And I think that that's just an epic failure of government. And so what I can tell you to best prepare yourself is that air regular car filters in your those air filters do not protect you from the air pollution from wildfires. So there's a portable air thing you can buy in your car. I know this sounds ridiculous, but like your lungs are your lungs. And so we are going to take some measures to protect ourselves in the interim of having policy change and real laws and regulations that are protective instead of self-reported garbage that, you know, lawmakers in Pennsylvania have no desire to change. And so the government needs to change. Maybe that's the people in it need to change, or their minds need to change, because we're all at the mercy. So, and it would be great if we had a real EPA protected our environment. I do believe there's good people that work at the DEP and the EPA, and even the ones that have been fired and whatever, but like they're only one part of the whole organization, right? And so when their directives are to not protect the people or do the less protective thing, you know, this is hard, right? And so be a watchdog. One of the things I forgot to put on the slide is, you know, part of this is like being observant. I know that sounds nuts, but you know, thank you to Physicians for Social Responsibility, who do a great watchdog training about like paying attention to what's happening in your community. And I think that, you know, seeing when power lines are upgraded, or why they're digging up this thing, or what's going on. Pennsylvania is being studied right now with a $2 million federal grant for new opportunities for transmission and power generation. And so we should all be sharing information with each other about things. This looks weird. If it looks weird, take a picture of it. You might not realize you need it until 6 months later, and you have to dig it out of your phone. But you know, we're gonna have to fight for ourselves here in the interim of having a change in government. And so again, this is the only planet we have to live on, and I don't want to struggle to breathe every day. I don't want anybody to struggle to breathe every day. I don't want anybody drinking polluted water. But here in Pennsylvania, we have places that don't have clean drinking water because of industry, oil and gas industry, and so it's like a third world country. And maybe we should worry about everyone else having clean drinking water before we start rolling out the red carpet for water guzzling hyperscale tech bros that just want to surveillance price and surveillance all these things to collect our data. But I'm not in charge of all the things. If I were, it'd be different. A girl can dream. What else? Am I at time? I don't know what time it is.
It's 7 o'clock. We could do another question if you want.
Okay,
and then
sure.
we'll wrap it up. Callum in Spring City wants to know why it's important to prohibit data centers from obtaining public utility status.
Great question. So when you have a certificate of convenience, which means you have achieved a public utility status from the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, then you have eminent domain. What does that mean? Eminent domain means you can go wherever you want to go. So you don't have to go to private property owners and get easements, and you don't have to go through land use, you know, for substations and all of these things. So if this is a big fear of mine, and that I've heard verbiage of these developers saying they're going to sell the power back to the grid that they generate with their generators or their big old massive gas-fired turbines on site. And you know, it's a problem. They're not a public utility. They're not serving the public good. They're, again, making money off of generative AI and all of its whatever. And there might be a way to use generative AI in a helpful way. I'm not denying that, but how this is happening right now is not good. It is not good for society, from building and living next to them, from the way that they're not regulated. I don't want an AI assist. I don't want to be talking to a chat bot about like your healthcare, right? Or and I've heard this from people. And so these are the things, right? And so I don't want them to become a public utility, because if they have eminent domain, you and I are all going to be living next to a big old data center. And if that happens, I hope they let all the elderly in when the air conditioning's out, because we don't have power, and they'll at least let them use it as a cooling center. But I doubt it. Can you please there's one more question.
Yeah, well, and then
Okay.
another question that
I'll be really
okay.
scared about the power lines. So someone else put that in there. It's been around in the southeast and up in next eras, trying to build those massive 765 kV lines right through the middle of the Commonwealth and green space. The lines up near Sugarloaf and Hazel Township, those are 500 kV lines. about to plow through everybody's property. You don't want to live next to a 500 kV power line. You don't want to do that. That's not a healthy thing to do. It's not a good thing to live next to. What was the other question?
The last question I think be a good one to answer is Mark in the chat here asked if you could hold meetings like this more frequently, that they found it really informative and helpful at a time when we're all very burned out and exhausted by it all. So
You asked a great question, Mark. We are trying to figure out our next steps to do this more regularly, and maybe just not so formally as a town hall. I don't know if it's like a podcast or something that keeps everybody up to date, and figure that out. So the first couple times around, it might be like, bonkers and all sorts of information, but we figure it's better to put it out there and you can digest it as you're able to. And just so that people are more informed, because I learn something new every day in this job. Oftentimes, though, it comes from people like you or anyone that calls me or lets me know about things. I'm driving around all the time looking at weird stuff, asking other people to help me look at weird stuff. We're all trying to share documents and go to hearings and all these things, fighting for our lives. So I do think having a regular platform. And so I do think we're just trying to figure out the best medium for that, and what is the most effective. And so we're gonna see what happens. So stay tuned. In the very near future, we're gonna put that together, so we have a way of not just putting things out in newsletters and things. But great question. And anything we didn't get to oh, I see the South Hanover Township Supervisor. Oh, I do know. So conflicts of interest. We have that person's contact info, right, Jeff? That's in the chat.
Yes, we'll have.
Maybe if we could, we could set up a time to chat with them, and I know a little bit about that project. We've gotten some calls for people, but again, not another switch and bait of, I think that's the warehouse one. That's not a warehouse now, because everything's a data center warehouse. Quarry, and the quarry's a common denominator. It's super messed up. What do you need to get enough support to get out of recess? That's a great question. I think you're going to hear something in the next week or two. I mean, there's nothing precluding the legislature from going back to work. It's not like we passed a budget, we have a mandatory vacation. This is just the leaders in the majority party of each chamber scheduling. They make the calendar. I don't decide when I go to voting session. The Senate majority party decides when we are in Harrisburg, which is the Senate Republicans. So and to be clear, I'm not saying that, Democrats are jumping for joy to come back and vote on a moratorium. And in fact, if you look at the votes in committee, it's people versus corporate politicians is where we're at. I'll just be blunt. And so there's a coordinated effort to discredit me and my efforts. And if you're going to spend more time trying to discredit me, instead of helping people, then you probably shouldn't be in public service. So those people should resign and go find a lobbying job or whatever. But so we're gonna keep up the hustle. We're gonna we're gonna keep doing the things and trying our damnedest. And we will look forward to chatting with all of you on a more regular basis. And please reach out to my office if you have questions. We'll send out the links and the slides afterwards, and please send us anything that you think is helpful. I always welcome information. The more we know, the harder we can fight. So